Josuke Higashikata, or if you want to be proper, Higashikata Josuke, is the fourth JoJo and main protagonist of Diamond is Unbreakable, the fourth part to JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. Diamond is Unbreakable tells the story of Morio in the early to mid months of 1999 and the bizarre incidents that happens in this small little town of 58,000 people. Part 4 is one of the most organic parts in the series because it puts a good amount of focus on the setting and town itself along with our protagonist Josuke. Araki, when writing Part 4, demonstrates how one writes both a great story and setting without having to sacrifice either of the two. So how can you write your own story with a unique style, partially due to its setting? First off, what is the purpose of a story? There are many valid answers to this question, but for this video's sake, we'll say the point of a story is to convey a plot, which is a series of events that tell a narrative. Stories don't have to be linear, but they usually are for simplicity's sake. In every story, there's a setting, a location where these events are taking place, and where the characters are fixated. There is no story without a setting. Imagine trying to tell a story of two children walking down the woods that run into a bear without giving the audience that information that they're in the woods. A story without a setting is one without context. The first question that would be asked is, where are these kids walking where they would run into a bear? So now we can see how important it is to have a setting in a story. With a simple story like the example, just mentioning that this story takes place in the woods is enough for the audience to understand the plot. And while this does work, since we would be able to tell a plot, it still loses its potential by not adding any more information to the setting. For example, are the woods scary looking? Are there any weird creatures within it? Does the woods have any magical properties? Is Winnie the Pooh in it? When trying to tell a story, the more specific you make the world, the more easily the audience will be able to understand the world you're trying to portray. And Araki, with his portrayal of Morio, excels at this by creating a fictional town that almost feels too real. When creating a setting in a story, you can use real life locations or you can create your own fictional setting. Using real life locations has the added benefit of the work being done for you already and allowing you to focus more on the plot, especially if you're a new creator who still isn't really ready to juggle multiple things at once, which is exactly what Araki did with part 1 through 3. Part 1 through 3 dealt with our cast journaling around the world, from Egypt, London, New York, Mexico, etc. And while this does live up to the adventure in JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, it gets away with having to develop these locations thanks to their real life counterparts. Araki didn't have to put too much thought into developing these settings unless he wanted to do something special or particular with it. If I have my story in the Bronx, for example, niggas envy, Blicky got the stiffy, got Blicky, drumming home. I make less work for myself to have the audience visualize the setting, versus if I made my story setting in the crystal dust forest of fairies and dwarfs. I got to do a lot in order to establish this place. When building your own fictional settings, you do have to put more thought into it compared to simply using IRL locations, but you also gain more creative freedoms. And you can still use real life locations as inspiration. You probably should use some element of real life places to create your new world. Araki created Morio, which actually resembles an area in his hometown of Sendai, where the residents, Araki stated, were quote unquote unusual and mysterious, which led him to creating a town full of stand users and the strange things that come with them. So we see how even a simple observation of an already established place can help us create a fictional one. Start by picking a location. It's a good idea to pick a place you know very well, since it'll allow you to add personal interpretations to it. It can be anything: your house, hometown, school, favorite restaurant, whatever. Then follow up with things you attribute to that said location. For example, the creepy addict in your childhood home, or the burnt coffee at the cafe with the cute barista. You know the one I'm talking about. Or even the whimsical teachers in your high school. Those exist, right? The more specific, the better. And the more you'll be able to add to your unique fictional setting. While the story changes and evolves, it's also a good idea to evolve the setting as well. Morio is a totally different place by the end of the story compared to the start. There are new landmarks, hidden gems, new businesses that opened up, mysteries that were solved, and less missing hands. You can see and feel the difference in Morio. You can make change with either progression or regression. Morio is an example of progressive change. After the death of Kira, Morio becomes a much safer place to live. An example of regressive change would be how Poochie's stand, Made in Heaven, accelerated the whole universe's time at the end of part 6, which was warping the reality for everyone, including our protagonist, which made their fight against Poochie even harder. Changing the setting adds some realism to your story and really adds impact to the overall plot. It's important to show how a character's actions, no matter how small, impacts the world. So when concepting your world, consider how you want your world to be in the beginning and how you want it to be by the end. The next bit on creating your setting is information. Well, what do I mean by that? Of course it's good to have information. Why wouldn't it have information? But what I mean is an influx of information about the world. Think about some of your favorite fictional settings like Hogwarts or any island from One Piece. You could literally take a college course on some of these places. And that's because the authors put so much information into these places that some of it isn't even relevant to the story that's being told. But that's how much information I encourage you to put into these settings. Araki, throughout part 4, sprinkles the audience with little tidbits about the town of Morio, and it makes it all the more compelling. For example, every year on July till August, Morio gains most of its revenue for the year thanks to the tourists that come for its rivers and beaches during that time of the year. The town flower is the Adonis. Its food specialty are miso flavored beef tongue. There are still samurai villas that were built before the 1980s that exist on the north side of town. And Morio's economy mainly relies on its agriculture, the summer festivals, and its coastal sea life. None of this information is that important to the plot of the story, but we are fed this knowledge giving the town more of a personality. Araki could most likely geek out on this fictional town for hours, and that's the amount of information you want to put into your setting if you want it to stand out. You as a creator should know more about your world than the viewers themselves. And you don't even have to use all the information you concept. Just having that information in your backlog can make your setting that just more interesting. And I think it's pretty cool when authors and writers retroactively tell us more about their world even outside of the main story. So be a nerd about your story, especially when it comes to a setting. Create something that you would love. Putting effort and extra care into your setting will not only enhance the story, but also make it a more unique and memorable one as well. Really, if I could sum up everything I mentioned one more time, it would be your own biggest geek, evolve the setting while the story also evolves, and use real life experiences and places to inspire your world. Obviously, I didn't touch on everything that makes a dope setting, but I believe this is a good starter pack to get you on your way. So, go out there, make some good stories, or at least I hope this was relaxing for you while you got to watch more JoJo clips or watch more Diamond is Unbreakable. I don't know. Anyways, thanks for watching, and I'll see y'all next time. Peace.